My only son told me I was too ugly to be seen at his wedding. His fiancée said if I showed up, they'd have me put in a nursing home before the vows. What they didn't know was I was dying, yes, but I was also hiding a secret worth millions. And on the day they tried to erase me, I let them smile for the camera one last time before I took everything back. Now let me tell you what really happened. I wore my lavender blouse that day. The one with the little pearl buttons he used to play with when he was a baby. I even pinned on my earrings the same pearls he gave me for Mother's Day when he was 12. I looked at myself in the mirror before he arrived, trying to see what he would see. All I saw was a tired old woman in a scarf trying not to look like a ghost of herself, but I smiled anyway. I thought maybe, just maybe, this would be one of those days we laugh about later. Maybe I'd say something embarrassing and he'd roll his eyes and Kendra would smile politely. Maybe they'd let me help fold napkins or taste test the cake frosting. I was still his mother. I thought that meant something. He walked in without knocking. All confidence in cologne. Tobias didn't even glance at the cookies I'd set out or the tea I brewed from the loose leaves he used to beg for when he was little. He just sat down on the edge of my couch like he had somewhere better to be. I was already standing when he said it, but I still felt like I'd been knocked off my feet. I think it's better if you don't come to the wedding. He said it like it was a favor, like I'd thank him for sparing me the trouble. My hand rested on the teacup I hadn't touched. I asked him what he meant, though part of me already knew. It's a very curated event, he said, adjusting his collar. Very modern, clean aesthetic, minimalist. Kendra and I agreed. We want the guest list to reflect that. I laughed a little confused. You don't want your mother in your wedding photos? He shifted in his seat. It's not about photos. It's about presentation. You've been sick, the scarf, Theo, the coughing. It might be uncomfortable for some of the guests. My heart felt like it cracked just slightly. So I'd be a distraction. Mom, he said, and I hated the way it sounded like a formality. You know, we love you. Just Kendra wants a certain look, a certain experience. And he didn't get to finish. She walked in without knocking too. Kendra, tall, thin face like a magazine ad. She didn't look at me. She looked around my living room like she smelled something off. So this is the place, she said. Cozy, very vintage, Kendra. This is my mother, Tobias said. She nodded without making eye contact. Nice to meet you. I stood there in my own home feeling like a guest. I'd like to be there, I said gently. I can sit in the back. I don't need attention. I just want to see my son get married. She looked at me then finally, and when she did, her eyes were cold. We've already finalized the seating chart and the dress code. I'm sure you understand. It's about the vibe. I looked at Tobias, waiting for him to say something to stop her, but he didn't. She's sick, Kendra went on. I mean, you're sick. It's admirable you're trying, but the whole scarf and pale skin thing, it's going to make people uncomfortable. Tobias added, we can send you the photos. We'll even FaceTime you in for the ceremony. It'll be like you're there. I don't want to FaceTime Link, I said quietly. I want to be in the room. Kendra smiled, but it wasn't kind. Maybe we can talk after the honeymoon about long-term care. Somewhere that's clean, peaceful, a good place for recovery. She means a nursing home, I said. Don't make this harder than it has to be, Tobias said. I'm trying to be respectful. I looked at him, really looked at him. Same eyes I'd rocked to sleep. Same jawline I used to kiss before school. Where did that boy go? I gave you everything, I whispered. Everything I had, he sighed and stood. And I appreciate that, but you can't keep guilt-tripping me forever. That's when he said it. This is why Dad left you. I felt something inside me go still. He said it like a weapon, like he'd been waiting years to throw that blow. And it hit exactly where he wanted it to. I didn't respond. I just sat down slowly, hands trembling on my knees. The tea was still warm, untouched. So were the cookies. Kendra turned toward the door. Well, be in touch. Let us know how your treatments go. Tobias leaned down and kissed the top of my scarf. It felt like someone patting a tombstone. We love you, Mom. We really do. Then they left just like that. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I stood, walked to the window and watched their car pull away. Then I whispered to the empty room, "Thank you for showing me who you really are." I reached for the scarf at the base of my neck and tightened it gently. It wasn't covering shame anymore. It was holding me together because something in me had shifted. I had something to finish now. And he was going to learn one way or another what happens when a mother who gave everything has nothing left to lose. Not anger, not bitterness, just clarity. Search. I didn't cry that night. I didn't scream or curse or beg God for answers. I simply sat in silence, wrapped in the faded flannel robe I've owned since Tobias was in high school. My thin hands folded in my lap. The living room lights were still on, but the house felt darker somehow, as if the shadows were listening. My breathing was shallow, raspy from the chemo, but I didn't care. I just stared out the window at the streetlight blinking above the quiet road, remembering the days when that same light would illuminate my front steps as Tobias walked home from school, backpack bouncing, always hungry and always talking. Now it's just me. Me and the weight of everything he said. "You'll ruin the photos. You'll make everyone uncomfortable. This is why Dad left you." That last one stung the worst. I knew Michael left because he was a coward, not because of anything I did. He didn't want to be a father. Didn't want to work 2 jobs. Didn't want to love a woman who carried stretch marks and exhaustion like battle scars. I never told Tobias the truth. I always painted his father as tired, not absent, as broken, not cruel. I let Tobias believe that maybe, just maybe, Michael had loved him once. It was the least I could do. Now Tobias has grown, handsome, successful, cold and cruel, just like his father. I rose slowly from my recliner, my joints stiff from the cold and the chemo, and shuffled toward the hallway. Every step echoed through the house like it was reminding me that no one else was there. My room was neat, the bed made, Bible still open on the nightstand where I had left it that morning. I walked to the closet and knelt with difficulty in front of the old filing cabinet at the bottom. Inside it, tucked beneath years of tax returns and birth certificates, was a folder labeled in black ink. Final. I took it out, brought it to the bed, and opened it carefully. Inside were neatly clipped pages. My will, my life insurance policies, the deeds to 3 rental homes, bank statements with balances that would surprise even me. I've never lived fancy. I still use coupons at the grocery store, still clip my own toenails, still wear church shoes from 1997, but I've got money. I built a quiet fortune penny by penny over the years. I remember the first property I bought, a rundown duplex across the street. The neighbor, an elderly widow, passed away, and the family didn't want the burden. I had just received a small inheritance from my aunt and used it to place a bid. I rented it out, fixed it up bit by bit, and suddenly there was extra money every month. So I bought another, then a third, then a stake in the local beauty salon. When my church friend Sheila needed help starting up, no one knew, not even Tobias. I was going to surprise him. That had been the plan. I imagined the day I'd pass the funeral quiet and respectful, and then Monique would hand Tobias the letter. Inside it would say, "You always thought I had nothing. But I saved this for you. I wanted you to know that I believed in your future." That day will never come now. I picked up the will, stared at the signature at the bottom. Lorraine Elizabeth Massey. Right above it, Tobias's name, my only child, my only beneficiary. I reached over to my nightstand, opened the drawer and pulled out my letter opener. A beautiful gold one Tobias had given me when he was still in college. It had my initials engraved in tiny cursive at the base. I used it to tear the will in half, then in quarters, then in eighths. I felt lighter after, like the air had returned to the room. The next morning I called Monique Chambers, my oldest friend from church and my lawyer. We've known each other since we were 19, back when we sang in the choir together, and believed our lives would be simpler than they turned out to be. Monique answered on the second ring. "Lorraine," she said, voice still thick with sleep. "You okay?" "No," I said, "but I will be. Can you come by this afternoon? I need to rewrite my will." There was a pause. Then Monique said, "Is this about Tobias? He came by yesterday." I figured. I saw the wedding announcement. No mention of you. He asked me not to come. Said I'd ruin the aesthetic. Monique didn't respond. And Kendra, I added, my voice hardening. She told me I was a liability, that I should be sent to a home. Tobias just stood there. Silence again. Bring the new documents, I said. I already know who I want to leave it to. Are you sure about this? I'm dying, Monique. But not today. Today I'm just taking back what's mine. Monique exhaled. I'll bring everything. I hung up and walked to the kitchen. I made myself a pot of tea, buttered a slice of toast, and sat at the table with a yellow legal pad. I wrote a new letter, not to Tobias, but to the new beneficiary, the Rose House Foundation, a women's shelter in South Carolina that cares for elderly women abandoned by their families. I volunteered there in my younger years, helped paint the walls, serve food, even sat and read the Bible with some of the residents when they were too tired to read on their own. They're me now. Women no one visits. Women no one remembers. Women people want to put away so they won't ruin the view. I finished my toast and began drafting my final instructions. The house would go to the foundation. The rental homes would be sold and proceeds donated. The salon would remain open under Sheila's name. The bank accounts would be transferred within 30 days of my passing. No funeral, no obituary with a photo, just a final letter printed and signed to Tobias Massey. I raised you better than this. I loved you more than life, and you threw me away for a woman who never even looked me in the eye. So now you get nothing. I won't bury my money beside someone who buried me while I was still alive. Goodbye. I set the pen down and looked out the window again. The street light was off now. The morning sun pushing past the clouds. A new day, a new will, a new ending. This time I would be the one writing it. Search ChatGPT can make mistakes. Check important info. Monique Chambers arrived just afternoon carrying a black briefcase and 2 folders. She didn't knock. She knew better. I hated being treated like a client. We've been friends since we were both young women in pressed choir robes, sneaking snacks during Easter rehearsal. We held each other's secrets, cried at each other's funerals, and aged together like oak and stone. Solid, weathered, and unshakable. When I opened the door, wearing my scarf like a crown and moving slower than usual, Monique said nothing. She just stepped inside and placed the briefcase on the dining table. I brewed tea, I said. But it's cold now. Doesn't matter, she replied. We've got work to do. I sat down at the table and opened the legal pad where I had started writing instructions the night before. My handwriting was shaky in places, the pen trailing off during moments when my strength failed me. But the message was clear. I slid the paper toward Monique, who read it carefully. Then she pulled out a clean set of documents, started a new will from scratch, and began writing. I watched her for a long moment before saying, I ever tell you why I started saving money? Monique didn't look up. You said you wanted to make sure Tobias never went without. That was part of it, I said. But it was more than that. I watched too many women die broke. Women who worked just as hard as I did. Women who gave their lives to ungrateful husbands, children jobs that paid them dust. I told myself I'd never go out like that. You won't, Monique said, scribbling something at the bottom of a form. You're going out loud. I smiled. I was going to surprise him, leave everything, even the letters. I had one written for every birthday until he turned 50, all sitting in a shoebox. Monique paused for a moment. What are you going to do with them now? I'll burn them, I said. He doesn't get those anymore. He doesn't get me. We worked in silence for the next hour. I provided account numbers, property addresses, the name of my banker at Citizens Trust, and the title to the salon I co-owned with Sheila Turner. I even had an envelope of cash tucked inside my sewing drawer, $10,000 in emergency bills, wrapped in rubber bands and labeled in case the world ends. Monique listed every asset, every dollar, every possession worth naming. At the top of the new will, I dictated the name of the sole beneficiary, the Rose House Foundation. Monique raised an eyebrow. You sure you want to give them everything? They've never asked me to hide who I am. They don't care what I look like. They don't treat old women like we're furniture they forgot to move. You don't want to leave anything to Tobias? Monique asked gently. I stared at the window. The curtains were drawn, but the light still streamed in. I left him my whole life. That's enough. Monique nodded and continued. By the time we were finished, my hand was shaking from the effort of signing. Monique slid the will in front of me and I pressed the pen to the paper. My signature wasn't as elegant as it used to be, but it was mine and it was final. I also wrote a letter I said once the last document was signed to him to explain why. You want me to give it to him? Not yet, I said. Let him have his wedding. Let him smile in his tux and show off his new bride. Let him think he won. Monique glanced at me. And then you give him the envelope right in front of everyone. Lorraine, you really want to make a saw letters sat under my bed. I carried them to the kitchen one by one, then fed each letter into the trash can, tearing them in half before they disappeared. The one for his 30th birthday, his future wedding anniversary, the one that began. If you're ever feeling lost, remember that you were always my son before anything else. Gone. By the time I was done, my hands smelled like ash and ink, but my heart felt clean. I walked to the sink, washed my hands slowly, and looked at my reflection in the window. The scarf was still wrapped around my head. My skin was tired. My bones were visible beneath my robe, but my eyes, those were alive. I'm not done yet, I told myself. And when I'm done, the whole world will know my name. The invitation came in a thick cream-colored envelope with gold lettering and embossed trim. I found it in my mailbox 4 days before the wedding, tucked between a coupon catalog and a letter from my oncologist. I knew immediately it wasn't from Tobias. The return address was someone else entirely. Cousin Renee from Colombia, the kind of relative who always found a way to be at every family function with a plate of something sweet and a whisper full of gossip. I stood on my porch and opened the envelope with care, my fingers trembling slightly from the meds. Inside was a folded card with cursive calligraphy, and a glossy photo of Tobias and Kendra on the cover. They were standing beneath a white archway, her in a long fitted gown, him in a tux with his arm draped casually around her waist. Their smiles were wide and perfect. I studied the photo for a long moment, as if searching for a crack in their expression. I found none. I opened the card. The ceremony had been moved to a vineyard on the outskirts of Charleston. Outdoors, surrounded by white roses and curated elegance. Beneath the address in smaller font was a note. We'd love for you to join us and celebrate this special day. Quietly, of course. Please sit in the designated family section and respect the couple's wishes. Who love Renee? I chuckled quietly. Of course, I imagined Tobias agreeing to send that invite as a gesture. A bone tossed toward guilt. Or maybe it was all Kendra's idea to make herself seem gracious without ever having to apologize. Regardless, the message was clear. I was allowed to attend as long as I stayed invisible. I folded the card carefully and placed it on my kitchen counter. I didn't need to think long. I would go. Not for them, for myself. On the morning of the wedding, I rose before dawn. The house was quiet. The sun hadn't yet crept over the horizon. I bathed slowly, methodically, my hands lingering over my skin like I was memorizing what remained of my strength. I dressed in a soft gray suit, the one I wore to church on Easter Sundays, and wrapped my head in a deep blue scarf lined with silver stitching. I pinned on the brooch my mother had given me at graduation, a small silver dove worn but still shining. My reflection in the mirror made me pause. My body looked smaller, more fragile than I remembered, but my eyes were still firm, still me. And today I had work to do. Monique arrived right on time, dressed in a navy pantsuit and low heels. She brought the manila envelope in her briefcase, sealed and marked with Tobias's name. I handed her a small black purse containing a few tissues, a bottle of water, and a second envelope. That one's for Kendra, I said. Give it to her after. Monique looked at me. Are you sure you're up for this? I nodded. I want to see it just once. I want to see how far he thinks he's come. We rode in silence, the car humming softly as the vineyard approached in the distance. The property was stunning. Rows of green vines stretching into the hills, guests in pastel and champagne-colored dresses milling about beneath, white tents and string lights. A small quartet played soft jazz near the front entrance. I sat in the car for a moment, taking it all in. He spared no expense, Monique muttered. Not with my money, I whispered back. We stepped out together, Monique helping me keep my balance as we walked to the designated seating. A few guests glanced our way. Polite nods exchanged, but no one recognized me. No one knew the woman in the scarf and soft gray suit was the reason this wedding could even exist. I sat in the third row, quiet, just as requested. From my seat, I could see the altar, the guests, and the small platform where the couple would take their vows. I took a sip from my water bottle and waited. The ceremony began a few minutes later. Tobias walked down the aisle looking sharp, polished, and proud. Kendra followed, stunning in a fitted gown that sparkled in the sunlight. The crowd sighed in admiration. I didn't. My eyes stayed fixed on Tobias. He didn't look my way. The officiant began the service, offering words about unity, about trust, about honoring the people who helped raise you. I watched Tobias closely. He shifted once at the mention of parents, but he didn't look back. The vows were long. Kendra cried during hers. Tobias smiled, charmed, charismatic as ever. They exchanged rings, kissed gently, and turned to the audience as husband and wife. Applause erupted. Cameras flashed. People rose to their feet. I remained seated. Monique leaned over. Now, not yet, I whispered. The couple made their way down the aisle, hand in hand, posing for pictures, laughing with friends. Kendra kissed Tobias's cheek, and he pulled her in with a flourish. I sat still, my hands resting on my lap, my breath slow and shallow. The reception tent opened. Guests began walking toward it. I turned to Monique and gave a single nod. Monique stood, removed the envelope from her bag, and walked directly toward the couple as they posed in front of the floral arch. Kendra saw her coming and frowned, confused. Tobias turned, his smile faltering when he recognized her. Congratulations, Monique said evenly. This is for you from your mother. She handed the envelope to Tobias, then turned and handed the second one to Kendra. Before either could speak, Monique walked away, returning to my side. Done, she said quietly. I stood slowly, gripping the handle of my cane. From across the field, Tobias opened the envelope. His expression changed almost immediately. Confusion, then disbelief, then panic. He flipped through the pages inside. The new will, the letter, the proof of donation. He looked up. Our eyes met across the vineyard. I didn't wave. I didn't smile. I turned and walked back toward the car. Let him smile for the camera. Let him have this one day, because everything after it would belong to me. Part 5 in first POV. Do not change anything except change to first POV. Search. ChatGPT can make mistakes. Check important info. Tobias stood frozen, the manila envelope trembling in his hands. Around him, stepped forward and placed a hand on Tobias's shoulder. Son, the man said softly, that woman walked through hell to raise you. You should have let her sit in the front row. Tobias couldn't speak. He just stood there, the envelope in one hand, his wedding unraveling in the other. Monique stood in the distance watching. I already driven home, sat by my window sipping tea. I didn't need to see it to know it happened. I didn't need to hear it to feel it. I had waited for this moment. Then it came quiet, precise, clean. I looked out at the streetlight turning on across the road and whispered to myself, this is for every mother who was told she wasn't enough. And this time, the tears that slipped down my cheek weren't from sadness. They were from peace. The funny thing about beating cancer is that nobody ever expects you to win quietly. They expect the triumphant speech, the survivor photo, the glossy smile with the doctor in the hallway. But when I got the call from my oncologist when she told me the treatment had worked, that the scans were clear, I didn't cry. I didn't even smile. I just looked out the window, folded the news inside me like a note only I needed to read, and said, good, because I had already made peace with dying. But now I had something better. Peace while living. I didn't tell Tobias. He didn't deserve to know. I let him believe I passed. Let the lawyer follow my instructions. Let the obituary run. Let the silence do the work. The world mourned me, but I was very much alive. I left Charleston 2 days after the wedding. Quietly. No goodbyes, no suitcase full of regrets. Just a leather handbag, my passport, and one final letter left on Monique's kitchen counter that said, "It's done. Thank you." I now live in a coastal village in southern Spain. The air smells like oranges and sea salt. My neighbors don't know my name. I tell them to call me Ellie. I rent a small home with blue shutters and an old courtyard where I grow mint and basil and sit in the afternoons with tea and a wool blanket across my knees. I still have some money, not a fortune. Most of that I gave away, but enough. Enough to buy my time. Enough to keep the lights on. Enough to start fresh in a place where no one sees me as a ghost or a burden. Back home, I hear they still talk about me. Monique told me the Rose House Foundation renamed their main building Massey Hall. Donations poured in after my story went viral. Someone had shared the photo of me standing with the other women at the shelter. The caption saying, "She gave us everything her family threw away." I didn't ask for that attention, but I'm glad it happened. Women started writing tributes, sharing their own stories. Hashtag after hashtag bloomed like wildflowers across the internet. Hashtag Lorraine deserved better. Hashtag Granny with the last word. Hashtag let her smile once more. They thought I was gone. And I let them, because for Tobias, losing me was the best thing that ever happened to him. It was the only thing that ever taught him anything. He tried to sue, from what I hear. Tried to get Monique to unseal the will, but it was ironclad, airtight, not a crack of daylight anywhere. She gave him my final letter, the one I signed with a steady hand and a clean heart. "I loved you and you spit on it. I gave you everything and you asked for more. I would have given you the world, but you said I was too ugly to be in it. So now I live in one where you don't exist. Goodbye, Mom." He never got to say sorry. He never got closure. And I'm not sorry for that. I gave him a quiet stage to be cruel on. I sat still and let him show his whole heart to the world. And when he did, the world saw it for what it was. Rotten, ungrateful, empty. Me. I didn't die angry. I lived with purpose. I sip tea now while the sun paints the stones gold. I buy fresh bread in the mornings. I walk to the market on Tuesdays. The lady at the flower stall knows I like white leaves. I tell people I had a husband once. I don't tell them about the sun. Sometimes I think about that scarf I left behind. Blue with silver threading folded neatly on the third-row chair. I hope someone picked it up. I hope someone wondered why it was placed so gently. Let them wonder. Let them write poems about the woman who vanished. Let them teach my name in fundraising halls and foundation grants. Because the truth is, I'm not resting in peace. I'm living in it. And Tobias, he gets to live in silence. That's the only inheritance I left. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe. Also, let me know in the comments where you're watching from so I can know. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye-bye.